Good evening. Welcome to the Kent City Council meeting for Tuesday, July 21st, 2020. This is a remote meeting being held, this is a remote meeting due to the COVID-19 emergency. A live broadcast is available on Kent TV 21 on the City of Kent Facebook page, as well as our YouTube channel. With that, the meeting is now called to order. And Kim, would you please call the roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mayor Ralph.
Here.
Council President Troutner.
Here.
Councilmember Boyce. Councilmember Fincher.
Here.
Councilmember Kaur.
Here.
Councilmember Larmer.
Here.
Councilmember Michaud.
Here.
Councilmember Thomas. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kim. With that, we'll move on to in the agenda. Item number 3 is the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda from council or staff?
None from staff this evening.
All right, seeing none, a motion would be in order to approve the agenda.
Madam Mayor, I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion stands as published. We will move on in the agenda to public communications. The first item this evening we have under public recognition is reappointments to our Cultural Communities Board. So our Cultural Communities Board was established actually under Mayor Cook, and it's a group of very committed Kent residents that serve our city not only as liaisons to their individual communities, but as a way to help the city make sure that we're reaching our very diverse population. I encourage council to check out the packet to take a look at the bios of the folks that we're requesting reappointment for tonight. All of them are Kent residents, but they're also representing cultures and ethnicities from all over the globe. So it's a very impressive list. I am grateful for the work that the Cultural Communities Board does. They are led by Uriel Varela here in the city, and will be playing a key role as the city moves forward in our race and equity planning going on into the future. So my ask tonight is that council consider the reappointment of those 13 individuals to the Cultural Communities Board. With that, we will move on to community events. Council President Troutner, do you have any events?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't have any events to report except for the outdoor movies are still happening at Showware. So if you have not had a chance to visit SSO Showware Center and participate in their outdoor theater, I suggest that you get tickets because it's really a fun family thing to do, or just to do with any of your friends. So you can find tickets and information online, and those are going on, I believe, through the end of the month. Hopefully longer. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will move on in the agenda to item 4C, which is the public safety report. And joining us tonight is Assistant Chief Camerzel as well as Chief Padilla.
Good afternoon, Mayor. Thank you. And members of the council, good evening. Yes, we're going to present on a couple things tonight, and we'll start off with the 4th of July after action, if you will. Assistant Chief Camerzel heads up our crime analyst, and his team crunched the numbers and provided the report. So I'm going to ask him to go through the report for all of us, and then we'll take questions afterwards. All right, with that, AC Camerzel, you're on.
Good evening, everybody. This is Assistant Chief Camerzel, and I'll be presenting the 2020 4th of July report. Starting with our 4th of July enforcement, due to the current climate, the department guidance from the chief was a modified approach from last year. A tactic of strong enforcement was not in the best interest of our department and the community. Guidance was to respond in person to as many firework complaints as we could with the resources available, and the focus was based on education and gaining compliance in lieu of citations and confiscation unless absolutely necessary. Comparing the holiday week this year to last year, between the 1st of July and the 5th of July this year, there were a total of 383 calls for service directly related to fireworks. During the same time frame last year, there were a total of 245, meaning that in 2020, we saw a 56% increase over 2019 in calls for service. The next is a graphic representation. This is comparing the last 2 years' data for the number of calls by hour. You can see the number of calls on the left, and on the bottom going across is the time, which is military time going from midnight to 11 p.m. You can see it really picks up around 8 to 11 p.m. with the majority of calls coming between 9 and 10, right when it gets dark. Over the last 4 years, from 2017 to 2020, the total number of firework incidents over the first 5 days of the month have dropped from a high of 430 incidents in 2017 to a low of 245 in 2019. But this year we did have an increase back up to 383. You can see the number of calls for each one of the years. And I'd like to point out that what we were calling an incident, that is a 911 call for service, or also an on view where an officer proactively saw something and stopped on their own. Just on the day of July 4th, comparing last year to this year on the 4th of July, there were 209 total firework incidents compared with 161 incidents in 2019. This is nearly a 30% increase just on that day. Again, looking at July 4th this year, this graph represents a spread of incidents again by time. So you can again see the peak hours are from 8 p.m. and to 11 p.m. But we're getting pretty good compliance, as you can see with the last year comparison chart during the day and after midnight. Our emphasis activity this year, we had a 2-officer emphasis car from the 1st through the 5th of July, and we had them out during peak hours. Our emphasis activity, this data is solely based on emphasis logs that the officers fill out on each one of those days. During that time, they logged 204 firework incidents that were handled in person by the officers. 115 of those were just on the 4th of July. We had 0 infractions and 0 citations. In one instance, we found a half a pound of fireworks that had to be taken into custody as found property. We had 70 verbal warnings that were given. We had 0 arrests for felony illegal explosive devices, and we didn't have to call out the bomb unit at all. We also had 0 injuries created by fireworks, but we did have 4 fires, 2 of which the fire investigators had to respond to as they were residential homes, one at 279th and 108th, and the other at 277th and 151st. Emphasis costs this year. There was a big reduction in cost due to no splash event and limiting enforcement, but we still had to maintain a presence at Lake Meridian Park and on the water. We were able to accomplish most of the staffing with on-duty personnel this year. So the total payroll costs for the emphasis, street staffing, and Lake Meridian staffing, and this includes the holiday pay rate and overtime, amounted to around $11,000 this year compared to $44,000 last year. And that's what the splash event and all firework emphasis teams on overtime. We did have challenges with firework enforcement like we always do. These challenges are identifying the specific location where the firework violation came from, responding in a timely manner to catch the offender still on site, identifying the offender once on site, officer observing the offender at the time of violation, and this is required, especially misdemeanor cases require that to be done in our presence. Officers noted that it was hard to make contact to identify persons who are lighting off fireworks in backyards. But still, with these challenges, we had 209 total incidents, and we had 70 warnings related to contacts, which is about 33% of the time that we were dispatched to an incident, we were able to make contact, identify who was doing it, and give a warning. So that's actually a pretty good number for what we had to work with. The enforcement summary. Due to the current climate, a modified approach from last year, Again, we responded in person to as many complaints as we could with the resources available. The focus was on education and compliance. There were no citations or confiscation unless absolutely necessary. Total, we had 209 firework incidents, and this is per CAD, which is computer automated dispatch data. We had 73 social media comments versus 700 last year, so much less social media traffic. Again, 70 warnings, 0 tickets, and it's not listed on here, but 0 injuries as well. And that completes my report.
All right. Thank you, Assistant Chief Camerzell. I appreciate that. Mayor, I'd like to add a couple of comments to follow up with that. You and I were out that evening at the lake and out and about. And I would say, you know, compared to the many years that we've been out there, this was still a down year compared to some that we saw maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And but we did have an increase over last year. So I think the circumstances with COVID limiting public shows forced people, or didn't force people, but it had more people decide they would do fireworks at their local residence. I think it's important to note that this is one of those crimes that has to be seen by the officer in person. And so that makes it a little trickier for issuing tickets. And I'm going to own this. I want to be very transparent and upfront in saying, with everything that's going on in our country and the tension with law enforcement, I did not want to put our officers in a position to be an additional lightning rod for confrontation and issues. So we went at my direction with warnings and education and did the best we could with the resources we had. So there you have it, and I'll take any questions.
Okay, any questions for the chief on fireworks enforcement?
I do, Your Honor.
Councilmember Thomas.
Of course. Excuse me, Chief, with a 56% increase and a 30% increase on the day of the 4th itself, wouldn't you expect to have a small percentage increase in tickets, for example? And I understand what you're saying now about, you know, the lightning rods and your concern for the safety of your officers. On the other hand, like you and the mayor got to watch that at the lake, but there was no splash event this year, which means that there was less. I'm just concerned. I thought I'm trying to remember the wording of our ordinance, but I believe it was a property owner that was responsible for the fireworks that went off on his property, not the individual. And you said just a minute ago, and maybe you're more correct on this than I am, maybe it's the old, I'm getting it a little bit confused with the old ordinance, but I thought it was the property owner and not the person itself. For example, if a 12-year-old was lighting off large amounts of skyrockets or anything else, actually, then the father or the owner would be responsible for his son's behavior. And he would have to pay the ticket of $250, I believe.
Correct. So you are right. The statute does allow for issuing the property or the person responsible for the property. But the circumstances for most of those are a couple of things that impact that. Number one, we still have to see someone committing the violation and identify who they are and what property they're on. And if you can imagine, council member, a lot of these are in cul-de-sacs in the middle of the street.
I understand that, but what about the lake itself? You have patrol boats that can go around from dock to dock and identify the property owners that way easily.
Right. And I don't know, I don't have specifics on whether we responded to the lake. I will tell you that at the time that I left the lake, somewhere around a little after 8, we didn't have fireworks going off when I left. So and that's not to say there weren't later in the evening. I'm sure there were, and I'm sure we responded to the complaints there. So
yeah, because after 10 o'clock, it got kind of crazy, but
okay. But
I just don't think, if I may, I just not sure your education approach is working, because we always had the 3 E's: education, enforcement, and I'm trying to remember the other one. You know, so maybe going back to the 3-prong approach was better than what you've got going now. I'm sorry to be critical here, but you know what, this is, I'm kind of passionate about this particular subject matter. I'll leave it at that and see what my associates say.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the chief?
Madam Mayor,
Councilmember Thomas?
I'm just watching shooting in Chicago, 17 people, and all this stuff with the statues coming down, and nobody's running in and confronting these people. And I don't want us to become one of those cities where we're just not doing anything. They're breaking the law.
Councilmember Thomas, I'd be very happy to have a conversation with you offline about
we have had
the work that the police department is doing.
Oh, they're great people.
So any more questions specific to fireworks? All right, with that, let's Chief move on in your report.
Okay, thank you. So I was asked to provide a little bit of update regarding some crime incidents that have occurred, shootings to be specific. So I wanted to go over that and tell you where we are with the cases and next steps, so to speak. So the first one I want to talk to, it was the shooting that we had. I think there was a lot of media regarding, we had what was initially reported as 6 people shot up on Pacific Highway at a Metro bus station in the area of 232 and Pack Highway. So up there near where the old Burger King used to be at that bus stop. What had transpired was we had 2 groups of individuals, young adults and teens, that got into a confrontation of some sort. At one point, one of the group's members pulled out a firearm and began shooting, striking several of the other group, including 2 that were critically injured, 2 that were seriously injured, and 2 that had grazing wounds. One looked like a skip round. It would be later determined that there was a 7th victim that was had sustained minor injuries, but didn't want to stick around and make a report to the police. Probably of a more tragic circumstance is that one of the youths was seriously injured and will likely have permanent lifelong disability as a result. So very tragic, very serious. There are undertones that would suggest that this shooting was gang related. And detectives have been investigating pretty much nonstop since the incident. We have several decent leads, but have yet to identify the suspect in the shooting itself. And so we're seeking help from the community on this. We also are connecting with Washington's Most Wanted, and we will be putting out pictures of the surveillance video, hoping to identify the shooters involved in this, and that way we can hopefully get to a point where we're prosecuting on that case. Yes.
Madam Mayor, may I ask a question? Nothing to do with fireworks.
Yes, Councilmember Thomas.
Thank you, Your Honor. Chief, were these gangs, were they racially involved? For example, Mexican, Asian, Black, white, what was there? Can you identify that part of it? Can you give us any information about that?
Well, I don't have any information that it was racially motivated. If I misunderstood your first part of the question there.
Well, maybe not motivated, because it could have been a drug deal gone bad, but
okay.
You know, could they be identified one side or the other? I mean, 2 distinct gangs.
And I want to be careful. It appears to be gang related. That's not been confirmed by the detectives. So
All right.
I'll be clear on that. And then I don't know that I understood the other part of your question. Were you looking for the races of the people involved?
Yes.
Okay. I will tell you that we know that there were 3 Black males and females in one group in the victim group. So, and I don't have descriptions on the others.
Okay, it'd be interesting to find out. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All righty. The second incident was the shooting that we had that was involving 2 victims on at North Central Avenue. This occurred back on July 14th, just a little, just close to 9 p.m. Officers were dispatched to a shooting at 841 Central Avenue. where they located a 16-year-old victim and his girlfriend. The male had been shot in his groin area, and what had transpired just before the shooting is they were walking and they were being followed. They were approached by two males and they were basically being robbed. The male and the female turned to run away from the suspects, and in doing so, one of the suspects shot the male one time in the back. So, looking at this was not non-life threatening injuries, fortunately, but still he was hit. Detectives are investigating, but we still do not have a suspect identified in that case either. So I want to add that there is a lot that goes into these investigations. And historically, the clearance rate, which is the rate at which we solve these cases, is pretty high for Kent. But some of these take time. And what is officers will canvass, they will check every possible video. We will compare the shell casings from the bullets that the rounds that were left behind the scenes in a federal database. We will turn over every stone. We will follow up on every tip that comes into our tip line. So some of these do take time to solve, but again, we are fairly successful historically in doing that. So the detectives are working very hard. In general, as I've reported prior, violent crime is high right now and is trending to be a very high year for that type of activity. And we've discussed a lot of what's going into that. So are there questions on that?
Chief, if I may, Mayor.
Councilmember Thomas.
Thank you again, Madam Mayor. So Chief, is 841 Central, is that like Denny's or Bone Scarf? How far north?
It's south, so it's closer to what would be
this is
there. Yeah, it's further south. It's closer to the park.
okay. Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. If there's nothing else on that, I will move on to the last piece I have for tonight. Kim, are you able to bring up the website for the KPD Way? There it is. Excellent.
Look at that picture.
So yeah, not a fan of that, but I get it. It comes with the job. But thank you. So we are very proud to announce the launch of a new segment on the Kent PD website called the Kent PD Way. We have spoken a lot internally and sometimes externally to community groups about one of the more important things that has to be looked at in terms of racial issues or social justice reform is the culture of the organization, particularly law enforcement organizations. So when I talk to our people about how we do things in our culture, a lot of times in our internal messaging, I will refer to that as the KPD way. And so there's kind of what came with the title there. I do want to give credit to communications manager Bailey Stover. This was his brainchild. He brought this project to me. And of course, I was very excited to get to work on it. So we had been discussing for a good time a way to present and have a forum where we could update information and answer questions regarding the serious work that has been doing and that we have been doing and will continue to do in this area. So with police reform and things of that nature, like I've commented several times, we have done a lot and we are in good position because we've done most of the work that's being called for, and we are eager to find solutions for the things that will make us even better. So with that, if you see there, you can scroll through there, Kim, if you don't mind. There's a couple of videos. There's a welcome video about what we were doing. There's some statistics on our use of force, and it's pretty incredible numbers. We are 0.3% of all the incidents that we go to. So you're looking at over 96,000 calls for service. 0.3% of those, I got to be clear on that, actually result in any kind of force. So anything from as simple as us grabbing someone and putting their arm behind their back, all the way, to other higher levels of force, 0.3%. Of that 0.3%, only 0.8 of those incidents have resulted in complaints. So we average, for all the calls we go to, we average about 3 excessive use of force complaints a year. And every one of those is thoroughly investigated through our internal affairs process. So we have data like that. We have other data that compares us in terms of staffing, amount of revenue spent per capita on law enforcement. And then there's a second video that talks about our areas of focus and why we feel that we are doing a lot in terms of potential police reform and accountability to the public and community engagement. So I would encourage everyone to get in there. If you go to the Kent PD website, and there's a sidebar there that has a bunch of links. Right at the top is one that says KPD Way, and you go there and it brings it up, and you can get all the information. We are looking to do additional updates on it. Currently, we are highlighting the 8 that can't wait. If you've been following us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and now Instagram, we have been updating one of those issues, one of the current issues, one at a time. And it's been very well received. It's a lot of reading, I know, but we want to make sure we're given as much information as we can. So I think it's a great start. Kudos to multimedia communications. Bailey, you did an outstanding job, and I do want to give a shout out to Tracy Padilla. A little biased there, but she's been working hard on this behind the scenes as well. So check it out, and there's more to come on that. And with that, Mayor, if there are questions, I'll take them. If not, that completes my report.
Okay, thank you very much, Chief. I do want to say thank you for your commitment to transparency in this community. Everything we do is out in the light of day. We want to be able to have these conversations, and I am proud of the foundation that our department and our city has already laid in building trust with our community. I know that we can always do better, and that's our goal, and we're working on that every single day. So thank you for that ongoing commitment. Council, any questions of the chief? All right, I am not seeing any hands raised, so thank you very much for that report. All right, we will move on to item number 5 on the agenda, which is reports from council and staff. This is an opportunity to hear about the work that your city council is doing outside of the normal committee meetings and council meetings. As we've talked about over the last few weeks, things are starting to sort of ramp up and find a little bit more sense of normalcy. All meetings that I'm aware of are still being held over Zoom and will be for quite some time, but most of the outside committees are meeting. There is a lot of work happening in the region. I will be brief in my report tonight. First thing to report on is the Flood Control Advisory Board. I am the vice chair of that committee. We provide guidance to the flood control district around budget. As we have heard about for many, many years here at our city council meetings and committee meetings, the city of Kent has a significant number of levee projects for flood control on the Green River. We have benefited from that flood control district funding multiple times. The project we have currently going on Lower Russell Road down by Van Doren's Landing Park is underway, full construction happening there. We did some education at the flood control advisory meeting this month, and we'll be seeing a full roll out of that budget at the meeting next month. On Friday, I attended a meeting along with the mayors of Pacific, Auburn, and Federal Way with the governor. He was in Federal Way to speak with healthcare workers. What I can tell you coming out of that conversation really is a request that everyone wear their masks. We know that that is, at this point in time, until there is a vaccine available, the only really strong tool we have in preventing the spread of COVID-19. We here at the city are taking the mask mandate very seriously. Our employees the expectation is that all of our employees wear masks, and the ask to the community is the same. It's it's important. It is for the safety of our community, and the only way we're going to avoid going backwards. The last thing any of us want is to see a shutdown of the economy. So my plea to the community is please wear your masks when you are outside of your home. It's really important and the best way that we can take care of each other. I'm going to end my report tonight with an ask of the community. If you have not already completed the census, please do so. This is the way that the city of Kent receives funding based on population. It is extremely important. Every single one of our residents count. It matters. If you have not already completed the census, you can go to 2020census.gov and complete that. It really does take under 5 minutes to answer those questions and make sure that you are counted and that the city of Kent receives the funding that we need and based on an accurate population. So earlier tonight, council heard we are 0.7% away from the percentage that completed that census in 2020. We want to make sure to push that over the top, and please take time to complete the census. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Derek Matheson, our Chief Administrative Officer.
All right, thank you, Your Honor. A few items tonight. Wanted to update the council that the executive leadership team held a race and equity mini retreat earlier this month, where we identified initiatives we can start right away, as well as some longer term initiatives for the 21-22 budget process. And of course, you heard Chief Padilla share one of those initiatives that we can start right away with the KPD Way website. So we're excited about that. So we'll stay tuned for more details. The leadership team will have a couple more days of race and equity training toward the end of July, and we plan to roll out training to the entire organization in coming months. I also wanted to note that it looks like we've settled on a date for our City Council budget mini retreat. Looks like that will be the evening of August 10th, and we'll use that evening to update council on the latest revenue estimates, as well as seek any input or guidance from council as the mayor puts together her proposed budget for submission to the council at the end of September. The rest of my report is in your packet, and I'm happy to share we have no executive session this evening. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Derek. We'll now turn it over to Council President Troutner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We had a workshop earlier this evening and we had two presentations. The first presentation was on the Transportation Master Plan. That plan is to better serve current and future transportation needs of the city, where it sets goals that guide how the city will invest in transportation over the next 20 years. So if you can imagine, this is a very important list that takes a lot of time and a lot of collaboration between different departments to put this list together. The council adopted goals that help to prioritize this list, to refine it, to balance multimodal projects, which include bicycle and pedestrian projects. We currently have 119 projects on the list that cover 42 corridors throughout the city. Those include bicycle improvements, pedestrian improvements, congestion mitigation, and safety projects. The areas that are being improved around the city include a downtown area, Midway area, Kent Industrial Valley, Northeast Hill, and Southeast Hill. So this has come to council many times over the last year. And as we're refining this list, we will continue to make updates to it. And it will come back to council on August 11th, where we will go over the list again, and then eventually it will go out for public outreach and input. So lots of different pieces that go into putting this list together. And as you can imagine, a lot of prioritizing taking place. The second workshop that we had today was on communications, and it was presented by our communication Director Bailey Stober. We talked about the previous structure and how that looked, and how this new structure brings everyone together to a more centralized communication team making us more efficient. And like I mentioned, making all of these different people who bring together this communications to our city in one place. We also saw the list of interns that will be working around the city in our communications department this summer. Really great group of young people that have leadership skills and interest in government. So looking forward to meeting them. We will be hearing from communications throughout the rest of this year and how that plan is continuing to come together. So stay tuned for more information on that. Lots of next steps coming up in communications. I also sit on the Regional Transit Committee, and earlier this year when we first met, our goals were to work on the strategic plan and service guidelines and updating those for Metro. And then with COVID and all of the changes, we're still going to be working on that throughout the year. We've just kind of slid our dates for when we will finalize all of that. And now it's just hearing from Metro on what the future of transit is going to look like, with people possibly working from home more, what our routes will look like, but make sure that we're still meeting the needs of our community and our underserved populations. So more to develop on that as well. I am now going to look to my colleagues to see if they have anything to report on committees that they participate on. And I will start with Councilmember Michaud.
Thank you, Council President. I serve on Kent's Human Services Commission, and I am happy to announce that the commission has finalized our grant selection. We used an equity lens to go through more than 107 operations. And that finalized list will be a part of the 21-22 budget process. And that's all I have.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Kaur, do you have anything to report this evening?
Yes, thank you. I serve as the chair for Puget Sound Clean Air Advisory Council, and we met on July 8th, and we had update from staff on transportation climate planning. We basically started looking at how the world has changed since we started working on this plan since 2018, and how everything is moving to virtually. And we had new updates from the staff on 2030 emission reductions, air pollution co-benefits, and we had presentation on probability of achieving these reductions. We also had a great presentation on environmental justice and equity issue, considering everything that we are facing in the world right now. And we will be meeting again, I believe, in September for this, and we'll have more updates on our goals and plans from the staff. So we also had a presentation on wildfires and wood stoves, on how communities are using, backyard barbecues and all that, since there are more people home. Even though air quality has improved, there is there's still change in air on how people are living at this moment. So I'll have more updates for you later. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Larmer.
Thank you, Council President. So I serve on the King County Senior Disability and Advisory Council, and we met last Friday. We had a presentation from People's Memorial Association of Washington, and this is a co-op funeral services organization. It was actually very, very interesting. I was a little, little squeamish of the subject when it was saw it on the agenda, but it turned out to be a really great presentation. And they had come before us mostly for education, but also to ask for our support in advocacy on the federal level, because I learned something really interesting. Funeral service organizations are not required to disclose the prices. And that leads to, actually, like in Washington state alone, they said there can be an 850% variance in prices for services. So a cremation can cost $490 in one location and over $4,000 in another. So There's some work, there's an opportunity for some federal advocacy to stabilize or not stabilize, but to at least require that those prices be publicly disclosed. So consumers have that knowledge when they're shopping for services. If that does not get included in the changes at the federal level, they will likely then be looking at a state, state mandate for some sort of disclosure there. So that was really the reason they came before us and gave that presentation. But if anyone's interested, it was a very interesting presentation, and it can be found on peoplesmemorial.org. And then the other committee I serve on is the King County Affordable Housing Committee, and we will be meeting next week. So I'll have a report on that at the next meeting.
Great. Thank you so much, Councilmember Boyce.
Probably needed.
Bill, are you there?
Councilmember Boyce. There you are.
Must have gone to dinner.
I see that his microphone is off, but
Hey, oh, it's up here. I'm sorry.
there you are. Councilmember Boyce, did you have anything to report?
Did you hear me, Tony?
I can now. You're there. Go ahead.
I don't know what's going on. Sorry about that. I do not have anything to report.
Right. Thank you, Councilmember
After all of
Thomas.
that, after all of that, sorry about
That's great.
I wait.
Councilmember Thomas, go ahead.
I waited for that. Yes, I serve on the Puget Sound Regional Fire Authority. We met on the 15th of last month, well, of this month, I guess. And mostly it was involved in what am I trying to say? Executive session. So there really wasn't much I could publicly talk about. However, we do have another meeting coming up on the 17th of August, which will be at 5:30, station number 78, which is out in Covington. That's all my report, Your Honor.
Thank
Madam
you.
President.
And Councilmember Fincher.
Thank you, Madam President. The Mental Illness and Drug Dependency Advisory Committee meets this coming Thursday, so nothing to report on that yet. The King Conservation District is looking for both an executive director and an interim executive director. So if people are interested in applying for either one of those positions and want to find out more about it, they can go to kingcd.org and find out information there. Of course, the interim director will be hired whilst the search goes on for the permanent director. And also for King Conservation District, want people to know that our soil testing program and the equipment leasing program, both of those are both back up and running. And so there are new requirements due to COVID-19, but both programs are back in action. As far as the Arts Commission, looking at booking for the Spotlight series with a start at the earliest would be December, and seeing how things go with COVID-19. Looking at some streaming options also, because even if we're able to go and meet in public, we'd only be able to sell about 1/3 of the house because of distancing requirements, social distancing. So Spotlight series, definitely hoping that we'll be able to go on. We will see how things go, but we do have our Christmas show booked. The visual art, public art part of the department has up at Morrill Meadows Park, there was the word water, those big blocks that you could sit on and all. Those we looked at, or there was a discussion as to what to do with that, looked at moving costs. There's another kind of like partner piece at West Fenwick Park, so part of the conversation was on moving it to that park, but looked at repair costs, move costs, looked at deaccessioning the piece. And so there was a good discussion over that. Then the next theme for the Kent Creates site has been announced, and that's quarantine art. So go to kentcreates.com and enter your pieces. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That ends our reports.
All right. Thank you, Council, for all the work that you are doing, especially during this crisis that we're all facing. Councilmember Fincher talked a little bit about it. And I think just, it's important to say it out loud. We don't know what the future is going to hold as far as when restrictions will be lifted, how they're going to change. So it does make scheduling of all of the things that our residents expect and enjoy from the city. It makes it really challenging. Our things like our summer concerts, 4th of July Splash, our Spotlight series. I know that I am missing very much coffee and conversation. Those are some of the things that I look forward to the most in ways to get face to face with the community. So we are working internally on how do we adapt and try and figure out how some of these programs can still go forward in this virtual world that we are all living in. So stay tuned. We're going to be becoming more creative. Follow the Kent Parks Facebook page. They're doing a lot of fun things around gaming tournaments and those kind of things. So, stay engaged. We're doing our best, as is everybody during this really complicated time.
Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had a question for Derek, if I understood him right. Derek, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, okay. I thought you said you're going to work on a budget review thing on the 10th of August.
Yeah.
I had something down on the 20th as our budget review retreat. Is that different than what you're talking about?
I'm not sure what's on August 20th. I'll have to look into that and get back to you.
But the 10th you've got scheduled for that night?
Yes, that was the date that works best for council and staff. And so
Okay.
we'll be sending an appointment out to council calendars later this week.
And what would be the time on that, if I may?
I don't have the exact time, but it will be an evening meeting.
Right. Okay. All right. Then I'll scratch the 20th. Thank you.
Okay. With that, we do not have a public hearing this evening. We will move on to public comment. I do want to remind the public that during the coronavirus emergency, while if you have anything that you would like to let the city council know or be entered into the record, please submit that comment via email at citycouncil.kentwa.gov, or you may also call in at 253-856-5700. So while the format is different, council is absolutely taking public comment on just as we would during normal times. It just can't be here in person as we're meeting virtually. So please know that public comment can be submitted again to citycouncil@kentwa.gov or called in at 253-856-5700. Item number 8 on the agenda is the consent calendar. This is a compilation of the work that the council has done over the past several weeks at the committee of the whole meetings. These things have been discussed, questions asked, and moved out of the committee without any controversy. With that, Council President, do you have a motion to pass the consent calendar?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move to accept consent calendar items A through I.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries 7-0. Consent calendar passes as written. Thank you very much. Item number 9 tonight under other business is subrecipient grant agreement with King County for Coronavirus Relief Fund for Economic Development. And I believe we have Michelle Ferguson joining us this evening.
Good evening, Council.
I'm Michelle Ferguson, the Financial Planning Manager, and I'm bringing forth the sub-recipient grant agreement with King County for the Coronavirus Relief Fund for Economic Development. On May 12, 2020, the King County Council passed Ordinance 19103, which allocated a total of $1.95 million for a grant program to support King County City's economic relief and recovery activities in response to the COVID-19 public health emergency. This grant program is intended to help alleviate the significant adverse economic impact of COVID-19 within incorporated municipalities of King County. Funds were distributed based on a per capita population to every city of King County with the exception of the city of Seattle, with a minimum grant award of $10,000. So what that means for the city of Kent is that we are eligible to receive $198,237 in grant funding. These funds will be used along with about $800,000 of Department of Commerce CARES funding, which was approved by Council on June 2nd, to administer a small business grant program to Kent licensed businesses that are suffering from the immediate impacts of COVID-19. Does the Council have any questions?
All right, any questions for Michelle? I am not seeing any hands raised. So with that, is there a motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I move to authorize the mayor to sign the subrecipient grant agreement to accept funds from King County in the amount of $198,237 for the costs incurred due to COVID-19 emergency during the period of March 1st, 2020 through December 30th, 2020, subject to final terms and conditions acceptable to the finance director and city attorney.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much, Michelle, for that presentation. I do want to remind those watching that our small business grant program is open and applications are available. You can check that out on our social media and website. Really looking for ways that the city can directly support our small businesses during this time. So please check it out. That information is translated into multiple languages as well. And there are resources available if you need help in filling out that application. All right, we will move on to item number 10, which is bids. Our first bid tonight is the Downey Farmstead Restoration Phase 3 Excavation and Habitat Structure Installation. And joining us is Tim Laporte.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I hope that you can hear me okay. I'm actually very delighted to bring you this particular bid award because this is a lot of foresight by our environmental group led by Mike McTudis. Earlier, like just a few seconds ago, you approved a grant in the amount of $1.4 million, which was item number 8F. So back in February, Mike McTudis, Alex Murillo, Melissa Dahl, Chris Wadsworth was the design team. Were figuring out a way to make this happen. As we've said in the past, the best way to get a grant is to spend the one that you have. And most of the grant agencies love having their grants spent immediately. So they figured that they could actually pull this off. And tonight we're actually going to be able to do it, which is to actually award the construction the same night that we're getting the grant. So, or that you're approving the grant. So you're approving a grant, or you just approved a grant for $1.4 million. Now you're going to approve a construction contract to spend that grant for $800,000. Now, clearly we're under the grant, but that's good. We want to be under the grant. And this is a very, very worthy project. On this slide on the right, you'll notice that that's what it's going to look like. It looks a little bit barren today, but that vegetation will come back. It will be what we call a braided river channel or side channels. And that area will provide multiple benefits. If you go to the next slide, Kim. The work that you may recall started several years ago. And again, it looks barren. That's the picture on the right. Obviously, the Green River on the left. We have the Ethos community on the left, State Route 516. The trail has been relocated, which there's the old trail in the foreground. And we're basically excavating it out. It's essentially a large soil excavation project. If you go to the next slide. Next slide, please, Kim. So again, looking straight down, this is what it looks like. State Route 516 is at the bottom. Ethos is to the top left, Signature Point to the right. This entire area would have been underwater this February, for example, and that provides an incredible amount of flood relief. In essence, it's doubling the river channel. All that vegetation is below the high water, but well above the ordinary high water. So it provides excellent salmon habitat. It's one of the best salmon habitat projects in Puget Sound. This one was recommended, strongly recommended by RIA. And I'd also like to publicly thank our King County Councilmember Dave Updegrove, who helped push this project along. So having said all that, we strongly recommend and encourage awarding this project to Olson Brothers Excavating. We got 11 bids. They were very good bids. They're a good contractor, and we'd like to roll ahead, spend that grant money, and get in line for the next one.
All right.
Any questions?
Thank you, Tim. Any questions for Tim on this project? All right, I'm not seeing any hands raised. Is there a motion?
Yes, Mayor. I move to award the Downey Farmstead Restoration Phase 3 Excavation and Habitat Structure Installation Project to Olson Brothers Excavating, Inc. in the amount of $803,731.50 to authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents contingent on the mayor's approval of the Cooperative Watershed Management Grant Award from the King County Flood Control District, and subject to final terms and conditions acceptable to the city attorney and public works director.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you very much, Council. Tim touched on this, but we're extremely proud here at the City of Kent of the work that we have been able to do surrounding these multi-benefit projects. So not only are we restoring habitat and making the river healthier for salmon, but it also does add to capacity for flood storage. And those are the best kinds of projects. And they added a recreational component as well. So I'm glad to see that the next phase of this project is moving forward. Tonight, the next item we have up is a bid for the City Hall Courtyard Improvement Project. And I'm not sure if it's Nate or Alex that's giving this presentation this evening.
Tonight, hi, can you guys hear me now?
We can.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. I am Nathan Harper, Facilities Capital Project Manager. I want to thank you tonight for allowing me to bring to you the results of the City Hall Courtyard Improvement Project's bidding. This is the second floor patio of City Hall, which over the last many years in inclement weather has allowed water intrusion into the lobby of City Hall. Not only being unsightly, but also causing some safety concerns with wet floors and such. We had a bid opening on June 23rd with 3 bidders, with the lowest responsive bidder being CFC Construction. Their bid came in at $263,191.50, which includes Washington State sales tax. We vetted this bid and the bidder fully and feel comfortable recommending moving forward with them to take on this project.
All right, any questions? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move to award the City Hall Courtyard Improvement Project to CFC Construction in the amount of $263,191.50 and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents subject to final terms and conditions acceptable to the city attorney and parks director.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you very much for that presentation and that vote. With that, we are down to item number 11, executive session. And as you heard earlier, we do not have one this evening. With that, I do want to continue to encourage everyone, when you're out and about, please wear your mask. It is the only way we are going to be able to get out and enjoy all the things that we're used to and all those programs that will be able to come back once we get the coronavirus under control. So wear your mask, take care of each other, stay healthy, and we are adjourned.